So I was watching different podcasts on YouTube. This guy. And the reason I watch these is because it lets me see inside the mentality of black Americans. And they had a guest on there that called in and asked this guy, Philip Scott, if racism is such a big deal, why do when Asians come over, Nigerians come over, Indians come over, and they, you know, set up shop and get education and open businesses and stuff like that. And the guy said because they aren't forced to integrate. And I was like,
Many people who have no idea that there were these vital, dynamic places where African Americans were living out their vision of the American dream, creating opportunity and hope and progress for their communities. So as Jim Crow begins to really take shape and African Americans are forced into segregated parts of the cities, these communities, rise up in places like Durham, North Carolina, and Little Rock, Arkansas, Jackson, Mississippi, and people begin to notice that there are all kinds of businesses and services that grow there, and so they kind of take on the name Black Wall Street.
One of the biggest and longest lasting Black Wall Streets was in Richmond, Virginia, a neighborhood called Jackson Ward.
So the factors that led to Richmond being the cradle of Black capitalism lay in the diverse slave economy that existed at that time. So you had African Americans who were involved in not just agricultural slavery, but also in urban and industrial slavery. Then after the Civil War, you had this concentrated community of African Americans who had been working in the city, in factories and in fields and rural areas around Richmond. They just continued to build the institutions and the communities and the neighborhoods that they had begun even before the war. And then you begin to have a lot of really important financial firsts, such as insurance companies and banks, which really highlight Richmond as the first Black Wall Street.
One of the most storied figures in Jackson Ward's history was a banker and businesswoman named Maggie Lena Walker.
She was born enslaved in 1864, right toward the end of the Civil War. And she really saw economic empowerment of African American women as the path forward.
Walker started her banking career at a mutual aid society called the Independent Order of St. Luke. Founded in 1867, St. Luke was established to help freed slaves gain economic independence.
In 1901, she said, "Let us have a bank." And she said, "I'm specifically talking to the women here, the good women here, whose money is in this organization." And she was able to bring that vision to fruition in 1903 when she became the first Black woman bank president. In its heyday, I imagined that it was fabulous to live in Jackson Ward. Any kind of service that you needed, you could get, in Jackson Ward. And I would just say, walking into the St. Luke Bank, I think had to be a treat. And I could just imagine a maid, a domestic, working in a white person's home in another part of the city, and she walks into the bank and she's greeted probably, by not just her first name, but she's called Miss or Mrs. And I just can imagine that in his height, Jackson Ward was an incredible experience. For Jackson Ward, it was more of a slow death.
A wide range of factors caused Jackson Ward's economic decline, including redlining, which kept capital out of Black neighborhoods, slum clearance, where cities razed old buildings without rebuilding in certain areas, and a highway system that cut right through the neighborhood. But the final end to Jackson Ward's Black Wall Street days came on the heels of the civil rights movement and desegregation.